Hey everyone, welcome to the Preps on 11 Web Extra State Championship Week edition. It's December, it's title time, but before we get to the games at War Memorial, we've got a couple semifinals left. Let's start in the 3A.
Yeah, Charleston and Rising. I mean, those teams have met, I think, 5 times to go to the state championship. And if you've ever, I know you've been to Charleston. I don't know if you've been to Rising, but that is, they're very similar because that is the heartbeat of the town. That's program, the school, and I know Rising is really excited to be at that level again. It's been since '04 since they've been there. Clay Toddy has been there for around 20 years, I think. Had some really good success early and a little bit of other success. And now, one game away from the championship, they run that run-oriented offense, and that really gave Prescott some problems. You know, facing a team that very athletic and very deep. And Rising was able to run the ball, milk the clock, and get some key turnovers at some key moments in the game, big turnovers during key moments, and were able to upset a Prescott team that I had penciled in to win the whole thing. I really thought with their depth and talent, but that's a Clay Toddy team, a team that is going to really hit hard, play physical. They don't always have a lot of numbers. But every one of those kids is going to work to the final buzzer, and that's kind of how Charleston is too. And Brandon Scott, you know, he may be the best athlete in Arkansas, really. I mean, we're going to pick an athlete of the year, and I think he is on that short list because, and we'll see what happens the rest of the year. But last year had a stellar basketball season. He was on Newport's best receiver. He's going to Jackson State. And Scott shut him down. You know, he's a quarterback by trade, but he played defensive back in that game. I think that's the thing that could give Rising some problems because he is a very, very good passer. I mean, we talk about all these different quarterbacks around the state, and you kind of leave him out, but he should not be left out. He's
been doing it for years now, too. He had to take over for injury when he was an underclassman.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a 3-year starter, and that's probably why I would give them a little bit of the edge. I think beating Newport, 42-0, that was a really big win. And beating Prescott was big too. But this is going to be a really good atmosphere. A lot of people from Charleston will be there, and it'll be like a state championship game atmosphere because both these teams are so tradition rich. I'm going to be at the championship game, but I wish I could clone myself and go because I've covered games there so many times, and it's a very neat atmosphere to be there.
All right, and then at the 4A, I mean, you talk about games that feel like they could be a state title game. This was just a trick of the brackets that they're meeting in the semifinals. We got Harding Academy and Arkadelphia.
Yeah, one of these teams is going to lose, and you're going to feel pretty bad for either one of them because they've both had stellar seasons. Talk about Harding Academy first. There's been some good success stories of teams moving up, and we'll talk about that, in a minute with a couple of these bigger classes. But Harding Academy, a 3A school, 3-time state champs, they're kind of low in numbers for being a 3A school, really. You move up to 4A, and Neil Evans, it's like these other good programs like PA, Shiloh Christian, others. They figure out ways to just reload kids. They don't always have a lot of numbers, but they've got talent. And they lost their starting quarterback, but Owen Miller steps in. He does a great job, and as a sophomore, and they've really dominated. Got behind McGee 14-0 and came back and beat them. So I think that they've had a really good year, but Arkadelphia has impressed me every week with the depth that they have, the explosion. And Donovan Witten, we just talked about Scott being a 3-year starting quarterback. Witten is that same kind of thing, and last year came just that close to beating Shiloh up there without his good running back. So I think he's a difference in the game. I really do. I think having a senior quarterback, Harding Academy gets to play at home, and they're very tough there. But Arkadelphia just has, it seems like, the total package. They've got a good offense and defense and a great quarterback. So I give them an advantage, but I would have liked to see this game next week, I think, to be honest with you. Having a week earlier is going to be tough for one of these teams to not get to War Memorial Stadium.
All right, now let's get to War Memorial Stadium. The 2A kicks things off this year with the rare noon Friday game to get the fun started. And it's a game that we were just talking about a few weeks ago, the Highway 70 Smackdown, Hazen and Carlisle. That game when they met earlier, that's the only game that either team has lost all season. Hazen was able to pull it off last time on the road at Carlisle, and with star Luke King only playing the second half. Is there any reason to believe that with him playing the whole game, they shouldn't, get to repeat?
Well, I think that this could be a series where if you played 10 times, they might be 5-5. I think they're pretty even, but that's a good point. He didn't play in that first half. They still won. We wondered before that game how that was. It was a situation where I thought they could be behind double digits by the time he got in the game, but they were able to keep it. I think the one thing that stands out about them, you got 20 guys. I was talking about that Fort Smith radio today to Matt Jones, and he thought that was really remarkable. 20 players, so you really could make an argument that they could move down to 8-man. But and we like 8-man. There's no question. We cover it very well, and we talked off air about how it would be great more programs added, but they did not want to do that, and they wanted to stay in 2A, and they made it work. And Coach Masankin, he said in the preview story that we did that every one of those kids is just tremendously gutsy. When you play football, you are dinged up. They call that dinged up term. That means you got bruises and bumps and cuts that aren't healing. And they're not going to heal until you quit banging into somebody. And that's week 14 or 15 for some of these teams. And their staying power and endurance is just incredible. You talk about King, he plays both ways. He's a quarterback, but he plays linebacker too, extremely tough. Then you talk about Carlisle, Jason Sullivan. He's broken several rushing records at Carlisle. They've had some good running backs in the past. He's gone for over 2,000 yards this year. I mean, they're going to give it to him, and they're going to dare you to stop him. And they've got a pretty good quarterback, but they're gonna ride with him, with Sullivan, and it's going to be a smash mouth, emotional game. And Coach Masankin said the loser of this game, it's going to hurt a lot because you've got a rivalry, and then whoever wins is going to win their first championship ever. No one's won a championship out of this in 9 tries combined. So it's a super huge game. I'm glad it's a Friday afternoon game. I think it adds a little spice to the day and gets things kicked off, and it should be a decent day. And a lot of people will be at that game. I don't think you can do any business. You probably can't even pump a tank of gas. Somebody's traveling on I-40 and stops at one of those gas stations, may not be open because
you don't have to worry about it being Friday at noon and not being able to get work or school off. Everything's going to shut down in that little stretch of Highway 70.
And those towns, and I saw early in the week where Carlisle schools put out a thing and said our school are going to be closed. And I'm sure that's the same thing with Hazen. And they want everybody to come over. I'm sure they're busing people over. Everybody's caravanning over. That's a cool deal. I think it's really cool. And I can't think of a lot of times where bitter rivals like that have faced off at the state championship. And playoffs, yes, but not really in a title game. So there's going to be a lot of emotion there. I mean, and I think it's, everybody that's out there is going to lay it on the line because it's even, I mean, if it can be bigger than a state championship, I think it is, because you got the rivalry on top of that, and everybody on the field personally. So it's going to be real interesting to cover and see.
And then you go from the smallest classification at noon of 11-man football to the biggest one. I was at War Memorial this week doing all the previews.
Yeah.
I was at Hazen and Carlisle's practice where, like you said, they've got 20, maybe 30 guys out there with the freshman teams. And then the next day, being out there for Bryant practicing where there's 100 plus and they got the drone flying around. That's the kind of juxtaposition we'll get in War Memorial on Friday. 6:30, Bryant goes for the 5-peat against Bentonville.
Yeah. I was also talking on radio today with Matt Jones about this, that people ask me all the time, like, how is Bryant doing this? And Kyle Sutherland, he's one of our main contributors. We were talking, and a guy by the name of Josh Rice, he's a backup defensive back. He's on their special teams. He picked up a scoop and score, and they went up 14-0. And Kyle's like, I've never heard of Josh Rice. And I said, well, that's why Bryant's so good, because that guy would be starting in a lot of places. And I talked to him after the game, and he said, when we get out there, we're playing hard because a lot of us that don't play a regular position are on that special teams. This is our playing time, and we're taking advantage of it. And I saw that ball on the ground. I took it and went. And Ethan Primus was another defensive back. He said he got in 30 plays, He had 2 picks against Conway in the first game. He had a scoop and score for 68 yards against Conway this time, and another fumble recovery. And he kind of said the same thing. It's like, we could go other places, but man, we like playing here. We're winning. Practice is great every day. So I think that's a big ingredient, is that you have got 2 or 3 deep on your roster that can play. And that's why it makes it for every year where you just reload. I mean, you've got Jordan Walker, the quarterback. He's a sophomore. He's very talented. But I think the key to this game is, if Bentonville can, they've got to try to neutralize Bryant's running game, make Walker throw the ball. He's you get more comfortable, but I mean, if you make him pass a lot, you may make some mistakes. And I think that's what the recipe is to win against them. But the thing that makes it so hard is their defense is so good. So you think, well, what if they were behind 14-0, 12-0, right off the bat? But it's never happened, because you might score once on them. Like the Cabot game, they came right down and scored on them, and then Cabot didn't score again until late in the third quarter, and they held them to a field goal there. So that's the thing. Bentonville's got a size advantage on the offensive line. Joey Sua, if you go to this game, watch him. He's going to Arkansas. He is a very good offensive lineman, and a very good kid too. A guy who has battled, being deaf to play football. That wasn't really highly publicized, and we started talking to him, and the coaches were talking about, communicating with him. Didn't really realize that he was deaf. So he's got a hearing aid, and he hears pretty well, but he's legally deaf. So good kid, and he'll be really good at Arkansas. But that's going to be something to watch, him and TJ Lindsey, the defensive lineman from Bryant, battling. But if they can control the line of scrimmage and run the ball with Josh Ficklin, and then on the other side, they can neutralize Bryant's running game, that's going to give them a chance. I give them a chance to win. I'm not going to pick against Bryant until they win it. I can't do it. But Bentonville, I mean, they're going to come in ready to play. They have nothing to lose, and I think that a lot of the pressure's on Bryant here, so I think they can make it, go into the fourth quarter.
And it's a new challenge for Bryant.
Yeah.
Those are kind of hard to come by these days, but these are 2 programs that just haven't played each other that much at all in the past.
Yeah, that's a good point. And just one more thing on that. So, when you look at stuff, and we probably analyze it too much, but like if they were playing Cabot, I think that's hard to beat a team twice. And Cabot, I feel like, would kind of know what they were getting into. And they had a chance. They had them, late in the game. They're down there inside the 10. They can't punch it in. That's the Bryant defense. But Bentonville, there's some unknown there, which could be good and bad. But they haven't seen anything like that yet. That front 7 is really, really good. And you saw what happened with Conway. Before they blinked their eye, they were down 14-0. It just was a blur. It looked a lot like some of the more dominant teams they've had when, about 3 years ago when they were blowing everybody out. That's what it looked like on Friday night, because they were up 14-0 before 68-yard touchdown by James Martin, then the scoop and score, and they were up, I think 35-5 at the half. So they can score in different facets, and they make you turn the ball over. 11 total turnovers in 2 games for Conway, and that's a really good top 5 team.
And Jody Grant and company up at Bentonville are hungry after what happened last time they played in the state title game inside War Memorial. All right, let's turn the page to Saturday now. Go to the 5A, and it's funny. This was a matchup of 2 teams that weren't in the conference last year. You got Parkview moving down, Shiloh Christian moving up.
Parkview, the depth that they have, Coach Brad Boulding said, we're a 5A school.
Got to specify with Parkview now, because you got them both.
We're a 5A school with a 6A football roster. We've got everybody that can play football is playing. So they've got a lot of depth. I think that's going to be one of the keys in this game. Shiloh moving from 4A, their first 22 are really good. And the thing that I like about Shiloh and Jeff Conway is they've gotten better every week. They got blitzed by Little Rock Christian in that first game. Little Rock Christian, the game under their belt, it really showed. A couple weeks later, they beat Metro Christian, who's in the Oklahoma 3A state championship, so they're a pretty good team. They blitzed them, and it's been off to the races since. They had a couple close games at halftime with Farmington and Prairie Grove, but and then the Mills game was relatively competitive for about 2.5 quarters. But their running game has been really good with Eli Wisdom, the quarterback. He's kind of a run-first guy. He does throw it pretty well. And Bo Williams, who's emerged as one of the better running backs in the state as a junior. The key to me is that Parkview is really physical. They're big. I think that stuck out to some of the coaches and the players when they watched it on tape, that those guys are big. The other thing that's an advantage is Bobby Boulding has done a tremendous job in his career of taking talented players and putting them in the right places and pulling those strings and having them really coached up so you're not only super athletic and big, but you know where you're supposed to go and you're not missing assignments. And so I think that's going to frustrate Shiloh, the front seven there. And I've picked Parkview to win it from the very beginning, but I've got to give a lot of respect to Shiloh Christian, because I think moving from 4A to 5A, it's kind of like with Pulaski Academy, we'll talk about in a minute. To move up like that, I don't think people understand how difficult that is. And you're already in a multiplier at the 4A level, so your enrollment's not even a 4A enrollment. So they've done a good job. You know how good Jeff Conway is. You've dealt with him before. He's a great guy, runs a great program. If they can run the ball effectively, they're going to have a chance. But there's some 7 guys there on the other side that are going to be chomping at the bit to stop them.
And that's another one of those Northwest Arkansas programs that knows how to travel to War Memorial. They've done this a few times now.
You bet.
And we get that again at the 6A level. Another game like the 2A that we were talking about a few weeks ago. It's the rematch that I think a lot of people kind of saw coming here. PA taking on Greenwood.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people were looking forward to seeing it again, because in the second half of that game, both quarterbacks were hurt. And obviously, you've got to give a lot of respect to Kane Archer. He's a freshman. He came in the game, scored the go-ahead touchdown on 4th down inside the red zone, threw a really great pass to Grant Carnes, and he finished it off with a nice 3-yard scamper in there. But he threw a dart to him. Tomorrow or Saturday night, we will probably see the number 1 quarterbacks start the game. So that's Kel Busby. He's been banged up. He was banged up in that game, so he didn't play in the second half of that game. Brandon Cobb played, and then he did come back, Busby, but he got hurt again recently. But we think he's going to be in there. But that will be interesting too. And I know that Kane Archer would love to play in the championship game. He's ready to play. He played really good against Little Rock Christian a couple weeks ago when they came over here during the storm Friday night. But Hunter Houston is really good. I mean, he's one of the better quarterbacks, and I know he would like to finish this game and win it after what happened last year with El Dorado getting knocked out and losing. I said whoever won the game in regular season would lose this one. PA is hard to beat twice in a year, but if somebody can do it, it's probably Greenwood. I think the recipe for the win last time was getting onside kicks and stopping them on 4th down. And if you do that again, you'll probably win the game. And I think Anthony Lucas, PA, knows that they've got to get a couple onside kicks. They've got to get one. When they get one, I think their winning percentage is like 80%. When they get 2, they've like hardly ever lost. And if they get 3, they've never lose. So, they're trying to get 1, and they really want to get 2. Because that's going to really help their chances of winning. And I think the onside kicking game hasn't been as good as it has been in the past, but Greenwood started working on that probably about 4 weeks before they played them, and they put another session into a period in their practice where they worked on it. So that's a brilliant move by Coach Young, but that's a guy that's been there a long time as an assistant. He knows how to win, and now as a head coach. So I think it's going to be a good one. It goes down the end. It's a high-scoring game, and you better bring an extra lunch with you, because you get a little hungry being there for 3.5, 4 hours.
All right, we've got a huge weekend ahead of high school football. And then the fun part, we get to do it all over again next weekend with the 3A and 4A state title games. We'll have the highlights from all of those right here on THV 11.